Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Bay12 Talk. This time, I'm joined by Tarn, Adams, and Putnam, and we talk about a lot of things from adventure mode to optimizations to multi-threading to debugging the game to just weird things about the future and kind of how things are going. There is a little bit of audio stutter on Tarn's end that gets a little bit worse towards the middle, but we do sort it out at a point before the interview ends. So if you start thinking, this is a little stuttery, just keep note that there is a point where it gets sorted out. All that being said, I hope that you enjoy the interview, and if you would like to purchase the audio for this interview, you can find that on my Patreon. And before we dive in, I do want to say real quick, check out my merch store. If you like the work that I do, we don't do any sponsored stuff here, so I'm entirely self-funded. And if you want to keep this channel running the way it is, check out the Patreon, check out the merchandise, and enjoy the show. And we are back, and I am joined by the one, the only, the toady one. How are you doing, Tarn?
Oh, I've had better days. I've retreated to my bedroom over a strange maintenance issue in my apartment, and am dealing right now. But everything will be fine eventually, I'm sure.
And we are also joined by, well, I guess Bay12's newest hire, Putnam.
I'm not sure I'm Bay12's. I mean, like, it's, you know.
Newest edition?
For legal reasons, I have to say I don't actually know what the full situation here is. I'm contracting for KitFox, you know. I'm working with Bay12 for sure.
Yeah, and I don't remember, was Salford Sal before or after you? I don't recall.
I think basically simultaneously.
Yeah, so yeah, latest is ambiguous then.
I'm technically a
That's true.
KitFox contractor at this point with these tutorials that I've been making too, so...
So maybe you're the latest. Huh.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's right, you're the latest.
So.
Well, no, there's no latest Bay 12 one though. There's none of those at all.
Just the still founders only sort of thing going on, huh?
Yeah, well, we don't know how to do paperwork, so that's just how it's going to be forever.
Refusing to do paperwork does make the process of not hiring people a lot easier.
Sure does.
But
You got people for that now.
I guess the question is that I just kind of want to start this off with is how are things, Tarn? Like, it's been a little bit since we chatted, and things have been kind of quiet on the like update side of things until yesterday, apparently, which is why I kind of wanted to do one of these, because I was like, well, things have been quiet, so it's time to do another group chat, and then it's like, well, I guess we actually have news. Stuff's happening again. So how's the last couple months been?
Yeah, it's been strange and slow. I mean, I'm still getting used to things, but there's also just been a lot of weird stuff going on that's made it difficult to push the balls forward. All 10 of the balls forward is to have like an actual result. Like they're all going forward, but like, because announcements are basically ready to go. I need 4 pictures and a few like letters bleeding through on the other side, and then that you'll be able to look at your old logs, you'll be able to look at a chronological list at your logs, you'll be able to go to combat reports from unit sheets, and you'll be able to step through like a pause until next message on the combat reports. Putnam did all that, and that's been something we've been talking about for a while because everything just kind of trickles forward slowly. And we've got the all of the artwork moving forward on like 5 different tracks. The audio stuff is in process, doing ambiances and other things for adventure mode and so forth, but we don't have anything to show there yet. And there's the procedural faces we dropped are just in progress though. They're not ready to go. Giant creatures in progress, not ready to go. Statues and engravings, that's on me now. I need to get those linked up. And the dwarf children as well are kind of ready for a first stage. That'll also allow like clothing palletization and some other things that come in with that. And then there's all the bug stuff, which Putnam's been knocking off different little bugs, and there was the crash with multi-threading. They were just taking a look, yesterday at alphabetical slabs, and I've got to do this ammo thing for sure. That's just been sitting there forever. It's slower than I'd like, but there's still things happening.
Kind of just sounds like a whole lot is just kind of piled up all at once. So like, If I were to just like ask, what's kind of the priority for you right now? Like, what's the like? Is it just kind of a scatter shot of just like working on a lot of things kind of all at once, or do you have like a particular priority list that you're working on right now?
Well, that's kind of the issue, is that because there are other people working with me, it's like it has to be everything at once, which is the thing that I'm not used to. I didn't mention Linux, did I, in travel mode? Those are two actually big priorities. We're getting Linux like ready to throw up on a internal testing presently. If it weren't for this weird issue I'm having with my apartment, we'd be ready to go on that. We just have to, or I have to set up the depots, the Steam depots, to split them into a bunch of pieces for different operating systems and things. It's all documented, so it should be pretty straightforward, and get all the little .so files going to the right places and the right ones and all that kind of thing, which seems like it just works. Like it all should just work, hopefully, and then that'll be Linuxy. That'll be very Linuxy all of a sudden. That's an Ubuntu Linux right now. I don't have any idea how Steam handles. Someone asked in Future of the Fortress last time about like different flavors and all that kind of thing, and I still have no idea about that. Right now we're compiling against an Ubuntu. And so it's difficult to prioritize when everybody needs something.
That makes a lot of sense. So like I'll kind of a lot of that out of the way. Putnam, what have you been working on primarily recently? Like I know Tarn just mentioned that you've been working on like a lot of bugs and fixing things that have been crashing, but what's that process been like over like, the past couple of months? I know that we've recorded a couple videos where we've talked about things, but let's just kind of assume that nobody watching or listening right now has seen those.
Well, I mean, most of what I've been working on is like getting healthcare put together. I am propping my microphone up on a bunch of bills right now that I've already paid, but like that sort of thing. So like mostly what I've been focusing on development wise is like things that I can do in like, small increments. Like I see someone complain about a particular bug and I think, okay, I'll look into that, see how easy it is to fix. Oh, it was easy to fix. I'll just send that in right now. And that's mostly been what I've been trying to do. The announcements thing was the last big like project that I sort of took on, and it was just a process of like bunkering down and doing that in my own, and I mean it's technically not my own time because I'm being paid for it, I guess, but it's essentially just working on it. I try to be like I try not to be holding anyone up, since that's sort of possible, that sort of thing. The SDL2 thing was like the worst that's gotten, I think, in terms of holding things up, and I try to avoid having too much in the way of like big stuff like that might be holding other things back. Like there's that raw parsing rework I've been doing in my own time lately, and like I had to merge in 50.09, and that's causing a big issue because now I have like essentially two entire C++ files stuffed into one that I have to work out which parts I need to keep and which parts need to be updated and so on. But that's all my own thing, and it doesn't really matter that much. And all of this, of course, I just have to handle this while I'm also like trying to get the medication situation worked out. It's very fun. Yeah. I mean, the programming's the fun thing I do while I have to work with the stuff that isn't as fun.
Yeah, I feel you on the meds thing. But yeah, no, it's I feel like almost every day I just see people asking me about different bugs. So like is there anything that you've like encountered recently where you're like, "Oh man, like I could fix this, but I don't have enough time to fix it." Like it would just it's just not a reasonable thing to tackle right now. Like what is kind of, because I asked Tarn kind of a similar question, but like what's your priorities list, I guess, when tackling bugs? Like, are you just trying to just take out as many of the low-hanging fruit things as possible, or do you have more like targeted goals that you're working towards?
I see a bug, I try to identify the cause, and if I can't do that in like an hour, I'll tend to... Well, okay, it depends on what time it is of the day. Like, the slab stuff was, like, right before bed yesterday, so I spent, like, 30 minutes trying to figure that out before realizing I couldn't actually figure out why it's displaying in alphabetical order when it totally should be sorting it correctly. Like, that sort of thing is a bit harder to do, as opposed to stuff like the multi-threading announcements thing, which I got another save that was crashing yesterday, and I like downloaded it, asked them if it doesn't crash on multi-threading. They said maybe. I turned off multi-threading, it didn't crash. I turned it on, it did. It's the same crash. So that sort of thing, sometimes you just get the same bug twice, and if that happens, that should probably be your first priority, right? If multiple people are like people rarely send in saves anyway, and if multiple people are sending in saves with the same bug, that's the point where you start to go, okay, that should be a priority. It's happening enough that like the 0.1% of players who are experiencing this are willing to go through the trouble, and there's more than one of them.
Any kind of repeating bugs is what I would imagine would be the number one priority, but I'm going to dive into user questions here because I have a rather long list of them this time. This first one's a little bit wordy, and it kind of covers some things that we've been talking about in the last little bit, but it comes in from Corey, and they say, hello, Bay 12 crew, and they state that you're a crew now. And then the question continues. I've never been happier with the game. I think that you've been making all of the right decisions, and I wanted to make sure that you actually hear that from some of us. And then they say, and your success has been heartwarming, and for the first few months after the Steam release, I felt heavily invested in your sales numbers and getting giddy when I heard the sales tick up. And it felt so gratifying to have such a unique story of development have a happy ending. Middle. Then they say, my question is about your success. You only get one launch. How are you going to sustain your success in development now that the game is released? Thanks.
Yeah, that's a big question, isn't it? I mean, the indie studios are always worried about their and first of all, yeah, thanks for the kind words leading up to that. By the way, I shouldn't, that was quite a long comment, and I shouldn't just jump right into the question part of it. I mean, I understand. I don't know that we've been making all the right decisions, or at least I feel like we could have been going faster. Certainly with some of the fixes that are still outstanding, but it has been a weird time, and there's still adjustment to do, which there was not really anything we could do about that. But in any case, the launch, yeah. So if there's indie studios concern themselves with burn rates, right? It's like how much money is being burned every month and how much is coming in, and when you have one big launch, you just there is a pile, and then how do you think about, well, this game is going to be there, in 10, 15 years, still working on it, and will we be able to cover everyone's bills, or cover everyone's paycheck or whatever? So far the answer is we're doing okay. I mean, it's fine. The Steam summer sale just ended. Things went well. We were able to cover all of the expenses and beyond. And it feels like the tail on the game right now is really long. If we're selling 200-300 copies a day, I mean, that's in some sense small compared to some of our, the children of Dwarf Fortress doing much better than us. But in the grand scheme of things, that's very good for an indie game, and it's enough to cover, our expenses. And then when sales happen, it's better than that. And we have our giant wish list numbers, over 1 million people, and that really doesn't change that fast. So it seems like, I mean, we had one person who works in games just comment that that's sort of just an indication of the overall health of the tail of the game. That as with those numbers like that, even if they don't, come off when there's a sale, it doesn't really move that much. It's enough to kind of sustain us where we're at. We're not trying to grow into some giant 200-person operation. And although I'm sure we, kind of scraped double digits at some point, which is sort of shocking on its own. So we're fine, right? And when you're 7 years down the line, is that gonna dry up? It doesn't seem like it. If it does, then we have a lot of money to dip into to try and figure things out. I mean, I know games like RimWorld, have several DLCs now. We've never contemplated doing a DLC, really. That's not something we need to do. And that's, one of those things where if things really dried up, then suddenly, just like with the Steam release, just like with the original Steam release, you're suddenly left with a difficult decision. Do you just stop doing artwork and programming and everything for the game, or do you figure out some way to pay for it? But fortunately, we're just not in that position right now. So we're just not committing to a future without those things, because we are not in the future right now. And it's impossible to say what directions things will go, but it looks like we don't have to be worried right now. That's basically, it's good. Things are really good.
That's very good to hear. I mean, like, I've seen the fun with numbers posts that you do, where you say that you're still selling a few hundred copies a day, which is like, even on not when the game isn't on sale, like that seems kind of like a lot from my perspective, at the very least, just staring at a lot of indie games. And it's certainly like on the upper echelon of what many indie devs would dream of, let alone like even hope for or aim for. So
yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, it really is. It comes out to, what then, like, if you're selling, 100,000 copies in a year, I mean, that's a lot of copies. That's enough to pay for everybody and for a while.
Should hit 1 million copies by the time we get Sieges.
Yeah, well,
maybe
and yeah, with Christmas, this is the thing. We went through a Christmas sale, but that was way early on. We had just released 19 days before. Like, so who knows?
Yeah,
like, who knows? Who knows? Like, the Steam summer sale quintupled the rate at which the game was selling. That's cool. I mean, for the purposes of keeping people around, that ain't bad at all.
That ain't bad, no. And also, of course, adventure mode. Now, speaking of adventure mode, I have this little block of questions that are all focused on adventure mode, so I'm going to start rattling into those. The first one that I have comes in from somebody named Jatabs, and they ask, how is adventure mode development going? ?
Yeah, it's a good question, because it is, finally. So I've got sites printing on the map now. I've got the old interface in, which wasn't in before. I mean, I had originally made this kind of weird decision. They're like, oh, okay, we're just going to build it up. The old interface, we didn't throw it away or anything, but we turned it off. And we're like, okay. So now I've got this blank canvas, and I'm just going to start throwing menus in there. And that's not how we did Dwarf mode. And it's just, even though it's going to change a lot, it just kind of slowed things down, and then we moved back to doing whatever we were doing in Fort mode and so forth, and just felt like there was some inertia there. So I went back and put everything just really ugly, just absolutely terrible ASCII menus over over the graphics when you walk around. And now I feel like I'm back into the process of actually adding things to the game. So I've got the travel map up. I could just throw the map in there, even though there's ASCII crap printed all over it. But now I can see the towns, and going to ask Jacob to draw a couple hundred little glyphs for me, and that's the kind of thing that just takes a bit of time to figure out what glyphs do I need. How cool do we want to make human towns look, for instance? Because if you remember the ASCII, it's got the different, like 197s and stuff, like the little lines that point in different directions, right? Indicating all the little streets and things. And we know every building there. Like when you get to the point where a human town is up there, there can be up to 10,000 buildings sitting there, and you know where they all are, located. And do we want to, and we know what color their brickwork is. So do we, for the ones that aren't made out of an erroneous non-material, some of them I think are still made out of inorganic bricks that don't have a material. But that gives us a lot of power to make things look pretty cool, which is kind of what part of the point of this process is to get the game more playable and kind of up on par with some of the other kind of graphical roguelikes that are out there now. But also, looking at the ways that our game is unique and making them shiny. So that's something that's exciting that's going on right now. And then the other part was the procedural faces, which is kind of half for Dwarf mode, half for adventure mode, because we didn't want to have you talking to people in adventure mode, which is one of the hardest things we're going to have to update, because the conversation engine is just terrible, and it's hard to make it better because there's so much you can talk about. But just having the little sprites pop up as the conversation window is just sort of unacceptable. So we're like, okay, can you actually show me a face? And you can. So that's going to be big. And then we're like, oh, well, you can just put those in the Fort mode character sheets, for instance, and then the trade screen and stuff, and it's going to make the game feel. It's kind of part of the overall theme. Just make the game feel like a regular game, just a regular game.
Little touches like, the little faces and even in Fortress mode as well, it just adds a lot of polish feeling to the game. I think right now there's just kind of there's a lot of little things that just kind of bother people that I think make people kind of over exaggerate like the state of the game. Like I think that the general space that the game is in right now, in my opinion, is quite good in comparison to past versions. And little things that just add noticeable polish, like child sprites for dwarves, which is something I know a lot of people can't wait for, and those procedurally generated faces are also something that's just very exciting that I think is going to make people a lot happier with the game currently as well. The next question I have here comes in from Mumbling Kobold, and they say, will we be able to play with just the keyboard, like in previous versions, in adventure mode? And I'm also going to throw in their second question, which is right beneath it, which is, will we be able to play adventure mode with the mouse exclusively?
So yeah, unlike Fort mode where we kind of dropped the ball and are now going to be slowly digging ourselves out of the hole that I put us in with some of the changes Putnam is making, especially to make the interface keyboardable in an easier way. My interface is difficult to keyboard in Dwarf Fortress and in Fortress mode. So hopefully that'll kind of come together as we go. Unlike that situation in adventure mode, we're just going to make sure you can keep using the keyboard, and you can do that right now because the old interface is sitting there. And I'm just going to be more careful as we're putting in the new interface that keyboard options will always work. As for mouse everywhere, so it's a tricky thing. Seems like we can do it. Just you have a little bag button you click on for your inventory, and have right click on a person to pop up some context menus to talk to them and that kind of thing. We're going to see how far we can get. It seems like you can get all the way there. We have movement with the mouse, which is a little complicated in 3 dimensions, but that's the first thing I tackled is just you can click and move in a direction, and it'll kind of handle ramps and things like that. But then there's the problem of, well, what if you're a flying creature? And what if you want to use a ramp? Like where we used all that stuff like Shift, Control, and Alt in the keyboard to kind of deal with that. In the mouse realm, you still have access to modifiers like that, but that part I haven't met yet. Figuring out if we can kind of keep people somewhat happy there with the mouse controls for movement. It is kind of a tricky problem, and not one where we have a lot of examples to look to for how it's been done before, because I don't think it has, as far as I know.
The genre is a lot more conducive to full keyboard control. People are more used to, like, if I'm playing Tales of Magial or something which controls in a very similar way, I'm going to be using keyboard, not exclusively with only the occasional click to move. So, like, it's just a lot more normal that way, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I'm certainly I went right over to the mouse on Fortress mode, but on adventure mode, I don't think that's going to happen with me personally, and but we're going to try. I remember Ragnarok was funny, that old 1993 roguelike, because like the interface buttons took up most of the screen. It looked like Armok, really, just like these giant buttons. I don't want to. We're not going to do that, right? We will not. We refuse to Armokify ourselves by having buttons to do everything. But it seems like we can get away with a pretty small number of buttons. Something nice.
I think the game would be improved by having an entire button dedicated to being able to like stand on your head and elbow or whatever, though.
Oh yeah. I mean, right now we just have the stance, and it's like you lay down or whatever, and you can stand up. Like you can't kneel, you can't sit, and you can't stand on one hand and one foot and then walk around. So yeah, we are still inferior to slaves to Armok.
Can't teleport people's livers out of their body, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
all sorts of missing features that are
I don't
baffling.
think we don't have any demons whose eyeballs burn out when the sun touches them or whatever.
I just want to throw this out there. One of the most popular new words of the year is enshittification, when companies just start to squeeze all of the money out of their users as possible, and it just kind of enshittifies the entire use case of whatever the product is. So is Armokification if the UI starts turning into the old UI again?
Yeah. I think so, and we want to avoid that. And we want to. I mean, that is a form of enshittification, I think. It's not just a popular word, it's an actual thing that's happening everywhere.
Yep.
As we enter I just saw one of these web ads where it was supposed to be about sandals, but had been written by an AI, so it, like halfway through it started talking about like erectile dysfunction. And just like no humans in the process. Mm-hmm. Except for the humans of the past that wrote the training data. Mm-hmm. And yes.
I think you're saying I should stop working on the dwarf loot boxes just in case the sales dry up then?
Yeah, no, straight to the dwarf AI and NFTs.
I think those already exist, actually.
Yeah, pay $5.
Sure, yes.
Pay $5 and we'll send you an AI-generated painting of your favorite dwarf or whatever.
Yeah. And then Steam will take at least Steam will take the game. I'm down, I guess. That's their policy now.
I did find somebody on OpenSea at one point who was selling NFTs of Dwarf Fortress World seeds.
Oh, no.
I don't think they'd sold any as of the last time I checked, and please don't buy them.
Yeah.
But
it's ambitious.
On a slightly more positive note, Toboter sends in this question. Have you already made up your mind about the HUD of Adventure Mode? And if yes, how will it be structured?
So yeah, we kind of been talking about that in the last question, and it's just sort of coming together. I mean, I don't think it's too different from Fort Mode, how there's just some helpful buttons on the screen that don't take up 90% of the screen. The things I don't know about are like that, like in the ASCII version, there's like the window that shows above you and below you and stuff like that. That technically might be harder to pull off now because of how the tiles work. And it's also like, I'm not sure it's necessary because you can already see below you pretty reliably, unless it's not a ramp situation, it's some kind of weird stairs situation, in which case you do kind of want something sort of kinda. So that's not decided. I'm not sure what we'll end up there.
I've been staring at all that part of the graphics code recently. It's easy. All the frameworks in place to have like multiple separate viewports. So like if we really wanted to, we could even have like when you've got a whole party, you can have little insets like picture in picture for all of your party members if they're off screen or whatever. But like that's a bit that'd be work. Like that'd be a lot of work with how like the UI might draw in front of it and things, and there's all sorts of horrible stuff like that.
Well, that's the thing. We've been relying so much on dirty buffers that it just will start to slow down, I think. I was running this problem with the tutorial a bit because I have an extra layer there, so it can always print on top, but then the part below becomes unclean, I think, and you have to refresh it. But I mean, it's turn-based, right? So it's a little different.
Might have to switch to frustum culling or something horrible like that, and like make it essentially a 3D game. If it's all that's a whole deal though. Like
it's a whole deal.
Future rendering rework.
Yeah, none of this is impossible. It's just like, is that well, I mean, we get into this problem again. It's like, well, do we kick that can down the road, and then suddenly something that people really kind of relied on or something, which is the up and down view, just like the old announcement logs, like some stupid thing happened, and so I didn't include it in the original version. Then it's like something that's an anchor around your neck for 8 months. So anyway, it's the adventure mode.
I think I forgot to mention gamelog.txt is also coming back with the announcement screen. By the way, that was another thing. I'm not sure anyone mentioned that at any point, even me, like the last interview or whatever.
I forgot if I had snuck that in 5009. I guess not. Or is it 08? I don't even remember what version we're on now. 8 or 9?
50.09 is like, it has this weird thing. The game log works, but only for X9, X10, you know, when it's repeating announcements, and it only displays the times X thing. So I'm not sure what's up with that.
Okay, so it's broken. All right.
Yeah. I mean, it's not significantly worse than it used to be.
Yeah, no, the X9, I think, I think that's definitely fixable. I know that part.
I sort of fixed it. I technically fixed it by just making it print out the announcement fully anyway, I think. Yeah. I didn't see any of that in like testing. Like when I looked at the game log, I didn't see any isolated X10 or whatever.
Yeah, so it's good.
I do see a few people in chat that are a little bit confused about what gamelog.txt is.
So it's a list of all the announcements in a text file, which is, you know, pointless for a regular user, but I believe the utilities like SoundSense rely on that to work. I could be wrong.
SoundSense does use that. You could sort of like, people haven't done it yet, but you could remake SoundSense entirely as an in-game mod now with like, because I added sound loading from mods and such. But like that'll take a while, and for now, it's better that SoundSense might just work on its own.
The next question I have from Mumbling Kobold once again is will there be any new additions or changes to Adventure Mode along with the mouse support?
Yeah, we're not sure what those things are, but the thing is, we're going to be as we have more and more news about Adventure Mode. I think the shortcomings of Adventure Mode are going to start to come to the surface a bit, because we're going to have this, you know, at some point in the future, some big launch, and we'll be telling people this is an RPG, or we'll be telling people this is a roguelike, and I'm not sure what you'd actually call it, but I don't think it's either of those things. I mean, maybe a role-playing game in the sense of playing a role, if you want to be a dancer.
It's a role-playing game in the same sense that a tabletop game's a role-playing game.
Yeah, it's a strange creature, and I think, I mean, I'm not saying I don't that we're gonna, you know, kind of dumb it down in any sense, or gamify it or anything like that, but we may advance some of the things that we had wanted to do, not, you know, taking 3 years or however long they're going to take to finish, but it feels like we want to at least clean some of that stuff up. Maybe make some effort for new people to not just be like, okay, you've been dumped in a town, and there's a paragraph that pops up that says like, all right, it's time for adventure or whatever, and you're like, okay, I'm in a house that has some crap in it, maybe, or maybe it's an empty house because the World Gen furniture maker didn't produce any furniture for this town, so it doesn't have any furniture, or maybe the World Gen furniture maker made too much furniture, so now it's filled with tables or something. And like, there's so much crufty weirdness about it that it's charming, but also like the game would be better if it were better. You know?
I mean,
I think in modern parlance, it's a survival game.
You know, honestly, like, it has about as much direction as DayZ. So go places and stab stuff and don't get stabbed.
Yeah.
I got a lot of questions, which I mostly Control F deleted in my questions doc about things like, are we going to be able to mine in Adventure Mode? Are we going to be able to craft items in Adventure Mode? Are workshops going to function in Adventure Mode? Those types of things. So I'm curious if any of those kind of thoughts have come up, because I know like we can chop down trees, but like aside from that, you're pretty limited as an adventurer.
Well, not just chop down trees, but you can nap stones into like the blade for a hatchet, and then make a helve. Is that how you say it? And you put it in there and have a stone hatchet for chopping down trees, and that's the extent of the crafting, as I recollect. Except I'm sure the modders have gone off and done things with that. But like that's been on dev forever, right? Just kind of building up the entire technology of the game. There's always been this tension. Adventure mode should have more details than the Dwarf workshops, but then they're like the same game, and so how do you square that? That Dwarf mode is always more abstract, but now this is more abstract in a very important way. That and ultimately we're like, well, the answer is to make Fortress mode a little more interesting by breaking the workshops into different furniture pieces that can still be more abstract, but be something that can kind of see eye to eye with adventure mode, and then that just a huge design and like historical, practical skills study question that is difficult, and then we move to do something that's not as difficult. So that is in the exact same place it's always been, and whether we just end up putting in workshops as a placeholder or do nothing and wait for the better system to come by, I really have no idea as what's going to.
So now that we've kind of exhausted my adventure mode questions that aren't like so pointed and specific, I think they're mostly unanswerable. We're going to be moving on to kind of more just general development questions. But I've got this is a really big block of questions. So the first one I have is from Themius, and they say, besides the Marksdwarf's rework, is there any other significant reworks or bug fixes planned for Fortress mode before the adventure mode release?
So generally speaking, the whole before the adventure mode release thing, like we've kind of had a release now, maybe two, where we've got branches in version control, these things that Dwarf Fortress is experiencing now for the first time in all these years. And I don't think people need to worry about waiting or us disappearing into adventure. I mean, I might disappear adventure mode land for a while, but I think we can just expect patches through the whole process. So that part I don't think people need to worry about now that we've got the process sort of sorted out. Now as for the bugs that are on the plate, I mean, we're just kind of going through them. And I mean, Mark's Dwarf obviously a big one, and the kind of related one where they leave food in their room everywhere. Then there's that I mean, there's that kind of thing where the it's not a bug, but it's that annoying thing with the staircases that you can't build staircases anymore on the floor. I mean, and then there's just go through the tracker, keep working on stuff. I don't think so it's not something people should be concerned about being left behind like before, where I would disappear for 2 years and we have some serious bug for 2 years. I mean, we've had serious bugs for 7 months now, but that's for an entirely different. I mean, we're coming out of that period now.
I recently got a save that crashes due to as far as I could tell, a pregnant werewolf. So that's back, I guess. Oh,
it's back. It's back.
I've only seen the one, but it's not good. So that's the sort of thing you need to watch out for. That's the sort of thing you can't expect to last for years anymore, because we are in fact capable of like I can do things completely independently and just pick things up. Like you can't get a baby in 4.5 months if you have 2 pregnant people, but like you can get 2 babies in 9 months,
Yeah, that's right. I mean, for me, from my end, I just get a new patch from Putnam, and then I just check out the whatever. I've got a kind of announcements and little bug fixes branch that I can open up now and just slap it in there and run it, make sure that the merge worked and stuff, and then it's good to go for next time, and I can recheck out my adventure mode thing and keep tinkering away at that. Yeah, I mean, we haven't had a big merge yet. I mean, SDL2 kind of counted, but it wasn't against anything big I'd been working on. So it'll be interesting to see adventure mode, as we go, how it competes with the things coming in. But I can just kind of rebase it on top of the like 5008, 5009, 10, etc. So it's not like there's some horrible climax in, a year waiting where the branches won't come together, because I can always just keep adventure mode current too. So I think it's just going to work. It's just fine.
Yeah. Well, actually, just yesterday I had a big, horrible, climax, big merge thing with the new tree stuff. Because, I've been the raw parsing involved. It was mostly the raw parsing is just an offshoot of reworking how textures are loaded, because that function makes the compiler scream and curl into a ball and such. And yeah, so I have to sort of move all that off elsewhere, and it's one of those hell merges. It's a hell merge that you need to figure out, but it's not that bad. It's not the worst I've seen. So it's so that's all in my own time too, and I have experience with this sort of thing, so it's fine. But that's the first actual big merge issue we've had where our work is kind of ground up against itself, and I doubt it's going to get much worse than that, because that function in particular, the the texture handler stuff, is really, really extreme. Probably, I mean, like I said, it's the single worst, so to speak, function in the entire game. So
yeah, but most of what I was working on during the entire Steam release was just making that function bigger, and then and then dealing with the ramifications of it or whatever.
Yes. I have a new computer upstairs specifically because I can only barely compile on Linux because that one function takes up most of my RAM.
Yeah, I remember we had to set the parameters specifically for that, but I'm glad it worked. I mean, glad this whole Windows subsystem for Linux, so far it seems to be working. We'll see when we get the actual version up and goes, but that would be nice. That's going to be it's even more convenient than the virtual machine stuff I was doing before, and certainly more convenient than turning on a Linux computer.
Yeah, we might. There's the Mac stuff is going to be hopefully about the same, except it's a whole it'll be the same, except instead of .so it'll be .dylib, and of course instead of having Windows subsystem for Macintosh or whatever, you have just a Mac laptop or something that you remote connect to on your LAN, and that's a whole situation. But you can do it through Visual Studio, so that's fine, I guess.
Yeah, hopefully we can figure that out, because I mean, it's not too much different from. I mean, I just had a Mac Mini. I would move everything over on USB keys, and it didn't take that long. Just copy the code, compile it, copy the compressed crap back, and I could just do other things while that was going on. So there's hope for the future.
This next question I have here contains a lot of words that I don't understand, but I'm sure you'll understand them. It comes in from Rin, and they say, what is the current progress on the Mac OS and Linux ports? And is an ARM64 build for Linux in consideration? Considering, as far as I know, the Linux port is rather far along in development, is further along in development than the Mac OS port. An ARM64 Linux build would allow for native DF on Apple Silicon machines before the Mac OS support is ready.
Well, it's out of my pay grade. I mean, I know I've got a drop-down menu where I can compile for different stuff, but I don't know how Steam, for instance, behaves with that. If we're talking about stuff I can distribute on my website, it's more about compile time and whether or not there are any users.
I haven't tried cross-compiling it for ARM64. I'm not sure. I don't think it should be I haven't tried cross-compiling with GCC at all, and I've never tried cross-compiling to another architecture, in my entire, time programming stuff, because I just generally haven't been programming stuff for different architectures. But I know in principle how it's done, because you need a full triple to cross-compile anything anyway, at least in my experience. So it shouldn't be too hard if it comes to that, to try to figure out an ARM. I could just try doing it on my end, see if it just works. I couldn't run it because I don't have an ARM machine on me, but, that's about it.
The next question, I think I know what the answer will be. It comes in from Hooky, but this is one of the most asked questions and also one of the ones I had to Control-F-delete because there was so many of them. I love Legends mode, and I'm happy with the return of XML exports, but I miss a few of the informations like maps or populations for Legends viewer. Do you plan to make export of the XML complete in the future, like in the pre-Steam version? Thanks for all your work.
Yeah. Now, when is a tricky question. And it's one of these things where the map export function was commented out because it didn't work, and in the new situation or whatever. And I'm sure it's easy to fix. And then I just need to have some little interface buttons made for a little menu, and you click it, and then there needs to be some kind of progress bar thingy. So yeah, just enough inertia to make it a little thing, but it's all there. All the code is there. So that should be one of those things. Like XML itself, it's one of those things that that can make its return. Yeah, all those there were like 15 of them. Those maps it could produce, and then some additional TXT files, I think.
Gotcha. This next one comes in from Gummyworm, and this one I think is kind of like trying to either dispel myths or prove them accurate, or maybe just question marks. I'm not sure what the response to this one's going to be, which is, what is the impact of world size and world age on performance in Fortress mode? A lot of theoretical knowledge claims that large worlds and long histories can cause performance to be worse in the game. Is this true?
Yes.
I love these yes or no answer questions. These are
I mean, there are more historical events, more sites, larger pathfinding for all of the armies that are running around in a bigger world. Yeah, you want more, you got to pay for it somehow.
I've actually like measured this sort of thing. Once you get like in a large world, army processing can actually become worse than like temperature processing. In terms of performance hit. Because large worlds are like, 4 times as big as medium worlds, which are already kind of big. So, well, a bit less than 4 times, but it's pretty close.
Yeah, that's just a lot of pathfinding, and there's so many little armies moving around doing their thing. I mean, it's part of what's going to make the game more and more cool in the future. And hopefully, as with some of the other stuff, it can be improved optimization wise as well, because I certainly didn't do a great job.
I couldn't find any low hanging fruit in my first check through. Certainly, it's not multi-threadable right now because they do need to pathfind, and that is not even close to like it all uses the like pathfinding chunk of stuff in world, and 2 things using that at the same time, that's just a no-go. That will never work out. If it doesn't crash the game, it'll like completely break the actual logic of the game. No, there's just no way. So that's a no-go on multi-threading for now. But that's for now. There's ways to get around it. Just slap a thread local in front of all the variables might even work, which is kind of goofy, but
Yeah, if that's the modern era, I'm all for it.
So, like, that's an interesting one for me, because, like, that's something that I've been kind of, like, having trouble figuring out for a while, because I tend to play with very large worlds, and, like, the only performance hit that I've really noticed that was, like, I can tell that this is taking longer is, like, saving on large worlds, but personally, like, I notice almost no difference between, like, a pocket-sized world and a and a large world while in Fortress mode. But then again, like with the CPU that I have now, I literally got a 100% frame rate boost, so I'm probably not the person to talk to anymore.
Yeah, I got one of those CPUs sitting upstairs right now. It's yeah, you sold me on that.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a way to make it save and load faster. Like my zlib implementation, I'm sure is quite suspect.
Funnily enough, this is actually like one of the biggest potential easy gains for multi-threading, but I haven't actually looked into it yet because it only happens on the occasion, and it's not that slow. It is slow, but it's not that slow.
Yeah. So, just when you get to having like millions of events, and it has to compress them all and stick them on the disk, and then uncompress them and put them back in. Like, I'm sure that can be improved. I know what I did was just sort of like, oh, I'm just gonna put it in there. And that was that.
And like the other thing is that like army processing, I said it beats temperature. Well, temperature is like the 3rd or 4th biggest thing like in normal play. So like army like the large world slowdown is still not going to be nearly as big as just like the slowdown you get from having more than 100 units or whatever.
Yeah, no, that's a great thing because we want to do cool stuff out there, and hopefully the changes we make for the army stuff are actually, like, in some cases they'll make it faster because there'll be more armies that are stopped and doing things like if you're doing sieges or something like that, that means fewer people running around because they're not running, they're sitting, and sitting is good pathfinding wise.
Yeah, because you don't need to pathfind if you're currently sitting in a chair.
Yeah, or sitting at a catapult, abstractly doing abstract things.
Since the layout of the world doesn't change that often, so it's probably possible to like make the pathfinding just a lot more cacheable in general, but that's like another thing.
Yeah, all that fancy stuff like jump point this and that doesn't work out for us because the calculations are not doable on a changeable map. Of course, this is don't want to get too deeply into that because we want to blow the crap out of the future. But then that's a question of like, well, how much world crap blowing is there versus how long it takes to recalculate the pathing data? Is that feasible? Not like meteors, although that too, of course, but like a forest fire, right? Like where there's a pathing interruption because the whole forest is on fire. That kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean meteors, forest fires. Turns out turns out that particular island was the back of a turtle, and now it's moved or something.
yeah. I mean, this is the thing, right? Is like, yeah, it makes it hard to do these kind of pre-calculation clever algorithms, but at the same time, you can't not do them, or the game doesn't run. So we'll figure it out.
So I've got a kind of a bunch of Linux-related questions here from Gaius and Aiden, which kind of boil down to, will save files be affected, or will we be able to move save files from the current Windows installs of Dwarf Fortress to Linux installs? And then the other question is, when can people test it, is how it boils down to. So when will you be opening up to testers, and if so, when? And also, will saves be compatible?
I don't actually remember what the save situation is with in Classic.
Mm-hmm. It should be. I think
it should
they
be fine, right? It should be fine, right?
It uses the same compression thing. It's like not terribly. It's the same zlib stuff. We were just talking about talking about like statically linking zlib this morning and how that's going to interact with distributing Linux and such. It should be fine. Saves should be compatible.
Yeah, because I think it's world gen seeds that don't reproduce or something like that because of how the random calls and stuff like that. There was some annoyance that those made them different, but so that should be fine. I mean, there's nothing fundamentally changed about that. So saves should swap. And then there was a second part I forgot of the question.
The second part was when Linux is ready to go, when will it be going onto a beta branch so that people can test
testing and stuff. Well, I mean, that was going to happen today, if not for this apartment crap, but that's going to happen internally. I really don't know how all of this stuff works, right? It's like how is someone going to test it? I mean, do we give keys to Linux people? Do people that have it on Windows that also have a Linux machine re-download it onto their Linux computer? So we'll have to talk to figure out the logistics of that, because we don't want to just put it out there without testing. That doesn't. We'll have to figure that out. But this is all in progress.
That's good to hear. I do like how it feels like almost every time we do one of these, there's a, oh, yeah, no, that'll be in by tomorrow kind of thing. It's like, I think the last time it was the XML export stuff. It was like, oh, yeah, that'll be in tomorrow. It's like, yay. So that's always good to hear. The next question I have comes in from Mohreb, I think is how you say that. And they say, how will procedural faces work with other sentient races and new modded races or even modified races?
Yeah, it's a great question because you gotta draw if you want to see it. And that's true of the sprites currently, right? You've seen the like, there's nothing special about dwarves in terms of that layering that they use, like that giant megabyte TXT file that says how that is. I mean, I imagine it's not something a new modder wants to see. This
No,
gigantic, yeah, it's really, and so procedural faces are this bad. It means that you'll be able to do amazing things, and also, I mean, we do set a certain bar in the beginning. As for the plan currently, and I don't know like exactly how this is going to play out because we are just kind of drawing things right now. We don't have a finalized version of this, but the plan is for the big 5 races to be proceduralized in face country. So we got dwarves, we got elves, we got humans, we got goblins, and we got kobolds, because why not? So those should... Now, do kobolds even have... I mean, how much facial detail do they have in their paragraphs right now?
I think they got like cheek. I can check real quick. I think they got cheekbones and stuff.
And eye color, I think.
So
cheekbones, etc.
Yeah, so there's some stuff. Okay, yeah. So I was wondering about that, but yeah. So they got what we've... These faces are not just like... Right now, the little teeny dwarf sprites just have like 4 random faces based on a number. It's just randomized. But the procedural faces are going to be based on the paragraph descriptions. And so if the paragraph descriptions don't have a lot of detail, then they don't have a lot of detail. But that's the power you'll have as a modder, is to be able to link all of the descriptive elements, the appearance modifiers, body part appearance modifiers, all that stuff, to and tissue color layers, all that kind of to the sprites chosen, kind of like how the layers work currently for the regular sprites. And that means you don't have to do it. It's opt-in. And if you don't have a face at all, it'll just sprite like it currently uses on the character. And it'll also let you, and this is, I'm not sure, it depends. This is really a question of timing and so forth. But the current basic vague idea is that for animal people, which don't have a lot of modifiers in any modifiers in their paragraphs, that means they just use a static picture. But it'd be a picture. You could draw it, not the sprite. So, as long as I've got people that like drawing things, I could have them sit down and draw 180 faces or however many it is, which is annoying in some sense since they all look the same, but it's better than nothing. Mm-hmm. And then if we do eventually say like, tiger people can look all different ways, and these are the text paragraph descriptions of tiger people that describe like, maybe this one has fluffier cheek fur or, thicker stripes or whatever, tiger people are doing these days. I know people have a lot of strong opinions about this stuff, and we have not yet waited. But that'll allow us to get away from having the same picture. Now, at the same time, we could also, as a kind of stopgap, although it is a lot of art, so maybe not, do the thing, but certainly for modders or whatever, like it does with the faces on the little sprites. And so it's like, here's, especially if you've got like a modded race that you just want to use some art that you have, of like 10 different, lizard people or something. And you're like, I'll just use a random one of these 10 faces. That's cool too, right? And that can be stated with a random, just like what we currently use with the sprites. Whereas ideally we would like paragraph descriptions to link up to those things. But the nice thing is this should all be supported by the system that we set up for dwarfs. We just set it up for dwarves, and then it works for everything. There's a lot of art to draw, but that is the current thinking.
That seems kind of like a lot, but
yeah,
I hope to see it implemented, because like that's going to be such a cool feature once it all comes together. This one comes in by Anonymous, and I don't generally ask anonymous questions, but this one is just really interesting to me, just kind of as a thought experiment. And they say, what is something you'd like to remove from Dwarf Fortress, but can't take out for one reason or another?
Well, I mean, my unfair answer to that is all the map stuff. Of course, that's garbage that needs to be destroyed for the map rewrite, and I can't get rid of any of it right now because to have maps. But that doesn't feel like it's really the spirit of the question. But I mean, is the spirit of the question more in that kind of like remove things to make them perfect? Philosophy I don't really subscribe to at all. Obviously.
Add more
but,
things.
yeah. I mean, that was originally said by someone that made airplanes. I kind of see it there, right? Because you can't just keep adding stuff to a plane.
Yeah, no, you need the exact perfect
it just doesn't
number
work
of parts.
anymore. Yeah, or enough so that it can get off the ground.
I am taking this opportunity to be opinionated. I don't like the way being perfectly average in terms of immoderation gives you a need to drink alcohol, but that's because of personal hang-ups mostly. That's about it though.
Oh, now is that true? Oh yeah. So that's not just true of dwarf because the dwarves have it like hard coded or whatever. But
the dwarves should always have that. That's fine.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Because it's because I guess it's because. Oh yeah. So for humans, for example, it's because that's the game's definition of temperance or whatever or moderation. And if we had. I mean, we have food, I guess. I mean, there's other ways for people to be intemperate, as it were. But yeah, no, basically, that. I mean, that's all just broken crap. I mean, there's no neurodivergence in the game. There are things that look like neurodivergence, but it's not actually neurodivergence, right? I mean, because things are infinitely more interesting than just a bunch of sliders, right?
Yeah,
and
like the way I word it when I'm feeling uncharitable is like, some people are just born with like alcoholism, which isn't actually how it's represented in the game at all. It's like just a minor need that like slightly, taps at their shoulder and makes them slightly unfocused. But
yeah,
like,
that's all kind of crufty. But that's true of everything in the game. So it's hard. I mean, to say because then again, and this is just me again. It's not about removing that; it's about improving it and making it more realistic, right? Yeah. So it's like, but as for actual cuts, I mean, what do you want to cut?
I mean, we cut money.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. What I was thinking is that, like, if I were to make like the minimal change, it wouldn't be removing the need; it'd just be moving it from like immoderation 50 to immoderation 60 or above or whatever, like just minor numbers tweaks. So like it's not even that major of a thing. I guess like there's nothing I could say the game needs to be removed. It's kind of like I don't know if I'm using this term right. I think I've had some of my more arty friends like complain the way I use this term. It's like a maximalist sort of game, so it doesn't feel like the kind of thing you just cut from. Unless you have a reason to, unless you're like adding something more on top.
It's like the Hydra, right? It's like if you cut off a head, you have to put two heads back on.
Yeah.
Naturally.
That's why people are here, I think, right? I mean, some people think they're here for other reasons, but then they complain about the game. So, I mean, we do want to make it a little bit nicer for sure.
I mean, shiny game is good.
Yeah, I like it. I like the. I mean, the polish is nice.
Yeah, it's kind of it's a bit over the top. You said like earlier, you said it was unacceptable that that the dwarf that it'd just be displaying their sprite, and then I think of other games in like similar genres, like Tales of Magial. It just shows their sprite. Caves of Cud, I think it just shows their sprite. So like we're going above and beyond on that, and I think that's kind of neat.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's. I've been thinking back to just like the old RPGs I would play. Of course, there's a face there,
like Daggerfall and such.
Yeah, like Ultima and stuff, that kind of thing. Of course, there's a little face.
There's Ultima Ratio Regum, which has procedural faces, furniture, and like a billion other things. But
I don't know. Would the ASCII because this, of course, we didn't get into this, but this opens the questions like are in classic character changed. I mean, I do not have a I mean, we're talking about like a 5 by, or like what would it be in actuality? A 10 or 12 by 8 area to draw. I believe that's just not a lot to work with. Plus, URR has some very handy glyphs that they have in their set. So I think like it would look like Star Zoo basically if I which I mean that's a look.
Have you seen the faces in Worsim? I'm pretty sure
that's the thing.
Made for localization anyway.
No, once we have more glyphs, then it's basically pixel art again, right? Open question. Open question there.
This next question comes in from Alfred, and they've submitted 2 questions, and I'll do them in order. But the first question is, in an interview after the Steam release, you said that you are now working with a team with Putnam. You got proper version controls set up for Dwarf Fortress. How did you control and back up Dwarf Fortress's code before it? Did you just zip and back up the code, regardless of using version control? Or did you use manual backups before? And did you ever have to recover the Dwarf Fortress code from a backup or repository due to losing work from hardware failure or another type of catastrophic event?
So I don't even zip it. I mean, I just copy because the thumb drives are so big these days, and there's not that much code. You can just copy it. And so you'd copy it into a folder with the date on it or whatever and have folders in there. Occasionally I would go back and refer to something. Just never came up. So I don't recollect having to go back to an old version. I don't think it ever came up. I mean, I've still got basic games from when I was a kid in the 80s and 90s and stuff that, like, when my computers die, I mean, they've tended now to die in such a way that I can get the data off, or I can like take out the hard drive and turn it into an external hard drive like a thumb drive and then just copy it into a folder on my new computer called Old Desktop or whatever. And so things have carried forward there. I've lost games. I lost games from the late 90s that I wrote. There's about 3 or 4 years of stuff that I lost because they were on computers I had when I was in like apartments, rooms, or whatever. And that didn't. Yeah, I don't remember what happened. Like why that stuff, my undergrad stuff, basically didn't come across. Because I think part of it was just because Windows 95 was, and I didn't have a good backup routine there. Because I was burning them onto CD. Oh, I have them on CDs. I think I have a lot of it on those CDs. I don't even know if they work in a stack of CDs. Because I was backing. Yeah. I remember I had to burn because I didn't have a thumb drive, and zip drives were really weird. This is way back. So yeah, but to answer, I mean, that's how I answer the question though. It's like it didn't really come up, and I just copied them onto a thumb drive. Yeah.
I want to point out version control is not backups. You should be keeping backups on top of your version control.
Yeah.
And this is thankfully understood by everyone here. So so you don't need to worry about that. You don't need to worry that like, oh, we're using Git, we don't need backups anymore. No.
Yeah, especially and we're not like the Dwarf code is not like on some cloud or whatever. So it's doubly true. Gotta back it up.
Yeah, gotta make sure it's not all in one spot that's gonna like you don't want the code to all die in one fire either. They're all, like, that's all true always, no matter what you're doing. So, you know.
Mm-hmm. You don't want to die in the fire either.
Back things up in multiple places.
Yeah, that's also true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But if you could back yourself up, you would.
Yeah. I don't know if I would.
Yeah.
Well, I would, at least. Come on.
Yeah, somebody in this room is worth keeping.
Uh-oh. Game crashed.
Uh-oh. That's good.
I would say to upload the save, but it's a bit early for that. That's unfortunate.
I'm still generating.
Guess I should. I gotta have 64 gigabytes of RAM soon. I should probably just since you gotta crash during saves. I could just like start generating large worlds for five, like do five at the same time. See if any of those crash. That's fun.
Or like this kind of jazz, like what I'm doing literally right now.
Yeah, since it crashed once, it might crash again.
Yeah,
Gonna
possibly.
need to figure that out.
Another question from Alfred, and they say, as a longtime software developer, I've been quite puzzled by Dwarf Fortress for the past 2 months. Lately, I see myself wondering how every little thing connects in the game. Specifically, I'm interested to know, how do you update and manage all relations between all entities and all of their individual hundreds of different variables, states, and conditions in the game loop? Are you using ECS? If not, what is your approach to update what happens to a given dwarf in a given frame, given all of their background info?
Well, I mean, we're not using ECS, especially in the sense of breaking things apart into giant variables that are in allocated blocks. Not at all.
Sort of considering that for items, but like that's like a, I mean, it's not a now thing. It's not a soon thing.
Yeah, it's a pretty big project. And yeah, it. I mean, so I mean, the almost naivest possible interpretation is how it works, is how the person should think of it. There's no reason why that can't work.
DFHack has a lot of it mapped out anyway. If you want to explore it, it should give you an idea of how the structures are, and you can. It's just like it's just a big structure.
Because they don't. I guess the thing is that, I mean, maybe this is part of the gist of the question. I have no idea, but you don't have to most of the time. There are tons of interrelationships, dwarves, but like they're not thinking about like their son. Even though that's a link that they have, they don't have to consider that relationship. If they see another dwarf and that dwarf happens to be their son, then it comes up, but only at that time.
I optimized that recently. It was a bit of a problem, actually.
yeah. No, it's not great to not use caches when you should be using them and caching bits and pieces and doing things faster and not doing binary search.
Yeah, log n, you're taught that that's fast, and it is, but sometimes it's not fast enough.
And sometimes it's not fast enough when n is 150,000 or something.
Yeah, like that's it's like 20. It's not quite 20. It's like 17 checks or something like that, and when everything is 17 times as slow as it could be, then you've got problems, and it's actually slower than that due to like cache stuff that you always have to think about.
Yeah. CPU architecture.
Yeah.
Architecture.
Yeah, thankfully, you only need to think about that once, generally.
Well, yeah, but mostly I hit 0 too many times.
It's so just generally the answer. I know the answer to that. The answer is you just check manually every time. It's definitely not an ECS, which does have performance impact, but it's not like large. Probably, I guess. Like ECS would be better for performance, but I don't think it'd be that much better. Like maybe having positions be in their own little array somewhere would be good for the line of sight stuff, but like there's only so much you can plink away at that particular bit of code before it starts not mattering.
The next question I have comes in from Frederick S., and they say, do you build Dwarf Fortress with or without link time optimization? And how much does it affect performance?
Now I remember when I was doing it before the latest Microsoft Visual C, it would do it would keep track of all of the functions you had made, supposedly have those available, so it would never go very fast, but that never worked, and it said rebuilding all functions And then it stopped doing that. And then sometimes you have really weird bugs because it should have rebuilt something it didn't. And so I feel,
recently.
yeah, so I feel very leery. But it only takes 15 minutes to compile now, so.
Let's see, link time optimization. I'm trying to look up. I don't even know where that would be in the settings. Let's see, we got O2, function expansion, intrinsics on, favor fast code, omit frame pointers. Whole program optimization is set to yes, which is link time optimization. So there you go. Haven't checked whether that's better on or off because like it hasn't really been changed at all, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it seems fast enough, and it's only gotten faster. I mean, it used to take 45 minutes. 15 I can live with, you know.
It's enough time to go take a quick coffee break or something.
Yeah, no, 15 minutes. Yeah, you just go and handle some Discord messages or do absolutely nothing.
The next question also comes in from Frederick, and they say, How do you test changes in Dwarf Fortress, and do you use performance regression tests based on various forts and scenarios, such as sieges?
Run the code, see if it does its thing, is what I do basically, and then more experience with actual optimization.
I have various test forts. I run things in, check the FPS before and after whenever I make changes. For the most part, it's not really siege situations so much as I have a fort with over 260 citizens that I check, and if I get a really big bump in performance for that, I'm like, wow, that's pretty good. So that sort of thing.
Yeah, I also cycled through a few forts like that. I think I was just more informal about it, but I did have quite a few laying around.
And just kind of see what the reaction is.
I guess could also go into arena mode and just place down 500 independent dwarves and see how that runs for a bit or something.
Yeah, I mean, there's the after every change, which I don't do stuff like that, but before every release, I had quite a long release protocol I would go through, check the merchants, and do what you say, do a sequence, and just make sure that things generally were behaving practically. I always made sure that I started up an adventure, talked to God, because that crashed so many times, so many different releases, because it's such a weird case. It catches a lot of strange behavior.
Yeah, it's too bad too, because you want to talk to God sometimes. You get more focused if you do that.
Yeah. No, he has to. It's better when God doesn't crash the game, for sure.
Yeah, I tried playing 40.01 recently out of morbid curiosity. Completely forgot it crashes if you try using your shield. There's all sorts of stuff like that.
Yeah. They're all the 01 launches are pretty terrifying.
Yeah, 50.01 is, if you'll believe it, one of the least terrifying that I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean that had beta testing, unlike some of the other ones.
Oh, that's true. I was around before that, and it still wasn't that bad. Cage freezes notwithstanding.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, I wasn't horrified with this process. I think this process actually worked out pretty.
So then the next question I have comes in from Stoyan, and I think this one's probably more directed at Putnam, but we'll see. Are there non-algorithmic optimizations that could be made, aka avoid copies and use moves instead, or other things that can be caught and fixed by static analysis tools like ClingTidy? Do you use these on a regular basis? If not, how come?
It sucks to use them on Dwarf Fortress's code. It's just because of the occasional function that's uses 120 kilobytes of frame of stack, which is approximately 10 times as much as you ought to be or whatever, and that sort of thing. It's just the linters like to scream at you about a lot of stuff, and I do want to go through at some point, when I've got nothing else going on, and just try to see about that. But that's it. It's all static analysis is doable, but not I mean, once I upgrade my computer, it'll be doable. I only have 16 gigabytes of RAM. That's not enough right now for that.
It used to be like a few years ago, maybe 3 or 4, I don't know, 3 years ago. I could kind of kludge through it, and I mean, it found some really kind of things that I was kind of surprised the compiler wasn't yelling at me about, just like logic and if statements that was just completely wrong. That was screwing stuff up, and then I was like, oh, cool to do that.
There's another bit to that question that can you read it again? There was something that I found interesting, but I got caught on the static analysis.
AKA avoid copies, use moves instead, or other things that can be caught and fixed.
Right. Copies and moves, that is an interesting one, and I have been looking into like using moves instead of copies and switching things to use like const references and like L value references where possible instead of just passing in references so the compiler can, do better on that and all sorts of interesting stuff like that. That's all stuff I've been like just doing as I see it, because like it is like it's so minor, it doesn't really matter, but it adds up over time, And also, like, the biggest optimization made so far is just, like, packing all the units together into one big array. That's been the biggest one so far. Which took some effort, and there might still be consequences, but there were less consequences than I was expecting. It was much easier than I thought it was going to be. Like, I legitimately thought it would be something that just didn't work, but it did.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't remember adventure mode. It didn't play nice, but then we cleaned that up, I think, or something. And we're trying to. That adventure mode thing is so terrible, where it uses the zeroth, like regardless. That's got to just go at some point. But that involves cleaning up like 1,500 places in the code. I'm not looking forward to.
Yeah, I checked myself, and I was like, oh, that's not fun. Like we could work around that. But it's not fun. It's not fun.
I just want to get rid of it. It's just like adding the Z coordinate or whatever.
I mean, to be fair, we could just move back to like putting units in play at the end instead of sorting them in, and then have the unit context blocks be sorted by pool ID. Like that would be on itself a sort of an optimization that would work. I don't know why I didn't think of that at the time, because I think it's because I forgot unit context blocks were a thing at all. So there you go.
Yeah, it's a process. Everyone loves programming. It's great. It's gonna be fun. Everything's gonna be right.
Yeah, this is the sort of thing I find like actually fun, and so it's like I spend my time thinking about fun little things you could do like that. It's interesting.
That part is neat. No, that part's neat. That part's neat for sure. I mean, I just have things sitting in my head. Play bracket 0, just sitting there because it's so bad and it's got to go, and that's not.
Yeah, that sort of with the announcement stuff, you might have noticed I like replaced a few huge blocks and like moved some stuff around because I was looking at that and I was like, if I want to add another thing, I would have to manually add a close to every single one of these places and that. Yeah, that sort of thing. All sorts of stuff like that.
It was one of those things where I knew when I was doing it, it's like this has got to be turned into a function, but you're just like, You do something about 3 times, and it's about. You can't plan ahead because things are too hard to plan ahead these days. And then you just sometimes let's just goes.
Yeah, you ain't gonna need it. Sometimes you do need it, but it's hard to tell when.
Yeah, and then it just got obvious, and then it's just obviously bad.
But I haven't seen too much that's obviously bad.
Yeah, that thing when it was closing like things usually, except for that had special cases, whatever, and then that 50. That's you can't come back in 6 months and be like, oh, it's like, well, shit.
We are getting a little bit of cutout on Tarn's mic.
That's probably because I'm sitting. Yeah, I'm not sitting in a chair, so my body position is harder to keep constant. So I'll try my best, man.
It's all good. I'm just thinking that we kind of missed about a quarter of the last sentence, so it's like, I should probably say something.
Yeah.
The next one comes in from Aw, and they ask, the water in ASCII looks pretty. Is there any plans to bring more wavy graphical behavior to the premium version? wave tops and throughs by color from darker blue to white foam. The water just seems really alive, somehow in ASCII, and it would be wonderful to get the same feel in the graphical version.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to do, generally, because it just takes a lot more work to make those kind of waves. I'm like the brooks are beautiful the way they like the 16 frame brook animation locally, the way that they go transparently on the rocks back and forth. That's, I think Mike did that. That was really good. But at the same time, it doesn't have an direction. So it's sort of frustrating that the ASCII, it's easy to get that stuff across, but in the graphical version, you have to deal with the fact that you have big 32 by 32 blocks, and they're going to look crappy if the different directions that together like don't merge properly. Whereas in ASCII, you don't even notice really, or it's kind of like, it's fine. It's not fine in graphics if they don't merge properly. Like at the boundaries of different directions, like when a river turns a corner, you have a big problem because it's kind of way more obvious that there's only 8 directions at that point. So I think, ideally we'd like to make a problem. I think the next water we're going to look at is probably ocean wave, because you're just going to see a lot more of that now, and yeah, we'll see where we're at with water. Kind of have all new artists on the water now.
We are getting some pretty bad chopping still.
I wonder. I don't know what I can do.
Do you know what your mic? What's the word for it?
Noise gate.
Noise gate is, yeah, it's the term that I was looking for.
I mean, is that going to be the Discord, the Discord option?
It's under user settings, voice and video.
Yeah.
Then it's just like automatically determine input sensitivity, or you can set it manually. Like I've got it set to something ludicrously low.
I have it on automatic right now. So I can turn off the automatic, and now it's just
even if it's just always on.
Yeah. Okay. It's always on now. Supposedly.
Even if
I have a green circle around there's a green circle around my face in the call.
Because what keeps happening is the green circle keeps cutting out, so it's like either trying to cover for background noise or something, and it's cutting you out, which does make you kind of hard to hear in some situations.
No.
I'd rather have some background noise and get all the words, personally. Yeah,
fortunately the fan is not too loud in this room.
It's there, but it's off in the distance. It's fine. But yeah, I personally feel that from my perspective, the lack of waves is actually maybe my biggest complaint about the graphics right now in the game. I know that everybody, I think, kind of has their nitpick, and for me, it's very much just waves. The lack of waves on beaches in Fortress mode bothers me to no end, and I would look forward.
Yeah, the beaches. See, that's something we could. Yeah, that one in particular we're going to fix up when we're talking about like river flow directions, which also come across better in ASCII. That's harder, but yeah.
So the next one comes in from Radicus, and they say, will we ever see a removal of the 257 by 257 hard cap on world size? I have been able to generate larger worlds by finagling around with Cheat Engine, but it'd be nice to be able to save my parameters without the size resetting, which inevitably resets my other 100 changed parameters when I change it.
Well, there's the typical user who will just blow up their game and be unhappy because people like big stuff, and like 257 by 257 is big enough for most people.
And
so
in fact, too big sometimes.
Yeah. So but I don't. It's like if there was some way to opt in to like just turn off the floors and ceilings on the numbers and just let the user mess around. I've got no problem with that.
I think it would be reasonable to turn off the bounds checking when loading parameters, but like babying people at least a bit on like the actual even advanced world gen screen, just like you shouldn't. It's like, or maybe if it's larger than 257, it's like, hey, it's your fault if it breaks. We don't support this.
Yeah, that's what it does on Embark, right? When you make a big Embark, it's like
yeah,
let's
like
think
16
about
by
this.
16.
Yeah, let's just think about this a little bit.
I have someone like I think two people who I know from like outside Dwarf Fortress things who always do 16 by 16 embarks, and I'm always just like, you sure? Like these days, 16 by 16 is like actually fine-ish. Like it can be faster if you have enough dwarves because like they're far enough apart that the line of sight code isn't bothering to check and it just skips over all of them. But
Oh no,
like,
don't say that.
yeah, you could get that same effect of 4x4 though. So and that's like 1/16 the space and 1/16 the like temperature and plant processing. And yeah, plant processing becomes like a huge like thing for FPS, even on a 6x6.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed some really weird hitching on the larger map sizes. Anything above like 5x5 just starts to do weird things.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, because like the plants, you notice, for instance, like trees become overgrown more than the original biome, right? Over time, and it's because it's not checking for some of the water usage and all kinds of other things that go on when it makes the original map. And I'm hesitant to try and fix it because of the speed issue. It's just, I mean, it's expensive.
Yeah, it's threadable sort of, but they like to cross over map blocks and things, so you can't do it on a map block bit per map block basis or anything like that. It's the same deal with water.
Yeah, no, it's gotta look nice. Gotta look nice. I mean, there are still black map. Well, there's map blocks, and then there's the mid-range map tiles, the ones that are 3 times wider, where it does, like, trees do bounce up against those because it has to be able to offload them for adventure mode and stuff. So you get these kind of line
Cursed
patterns.
maps.
Yeah, so there might be a way to thread it on the mid-map level or something like that, or
Yeah.
the mid-map tile level rather.
The mid maps, I call them cursed, at least partially because like embark screen slowdowns, that's mid map stuff.
Oh yeah,
It's all
yeah,
sorts of stuff.
yeah. No, they're terrible, and they're also necessary and happy.
A lot of
That's
the crashes, that's something happening with mid maps, But
yeah,
like without them, like the game just wouldn't really run. So it's better they crash occasionally and make the game playable, I guess.
yeah.
I
They
mean,
need that.
it's better that they don't crash at all, but
Yeah.
there's
And we're
there's
gonna
compromise.
be. And I'm really like, I'm not sure what the future holds for them when we get to like map rewrite stuff where we want to have like world maps of different shapes and connectivity. But I have a feeling the mid-level maps will still be crucial because they're kind of what turns it into a manifold, right? They're like the ant's eye view of the world map that lets you do strange things because you could stitch them together differently. And yeah, no, there's some optimistic future that the mid map's going to play some key role in.
Yeah, find a way to get those flat chains and Bannock space shaped worlds or whatever.
Yeah, even just some basic donatage and other things people expect.
You do got to think of the topology.
Yeah. Mid maps are the way to do topology and differential geometry on world maps, and it's what we're going for.
Like, it's you have, but like, well, there's going to be a point. Hopefully, we don't get to the point where there's a bug report with something, and we have to ask. So, is your map simply connected, or just edge connected, or what are we talking?
Yeah, that's exactly where we're going. It's like, is your map like a microcosm of a universe, or is it a macrocosm of some other universe, or whatever?
Yeah,
It's going to be troublesome.
is it spherical geometry? Is it do you have a portal somewhere that's like making that makes the pathfinding heuristics not work?
Yeah, it's well, we always bite off more than we can chew. Don't even have no teeth left over here.
all sorts of problems like that. I was talking about like Stellaris. It's one of the newer strategy games. They got portals that can go from arbitrary points to other arbitrary points, and I thought about it and it's like, oh, that's a nightmare for pathfinding, isn't it? It means that you can't have the heuristics basically at all. Like if you're doing A star, then you can't have like a distance heuristic because sometimes you can just skip past the entire distance. And if you're missing that, then your pathfinding is just wrong. So you just have to go with the base algorithm, etc. There's all sorts of things like that.
Yeah, fortunately, it's like what
We're
1,000
moving in
nodes,
that
1,000
direction.
nodes max or something.
Yeah,
So
it's 1,000 max, so it's not that bad. We don't have that.
yeah. No, we don't. No, if we had arbitrary portals between any two map tiles, well, good luck. It's going to be fun. We're going to have a great time.
Yeah, they're just not going to use the portals half the time. You'll have to deal with it.
Yeah, yeah. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, I could just, or we could do, flood fill from the portal and just keep that data around, and then
Well,
they
that's
try
what I
to
expect is going to
first.
happen. It's like when they do the tree, because they already do all kinds of weird stuff with their jumping between trees and climbing trees and stuff. They have their acrobatic. So there's also there's the acrobatic pathfinding flood, but now there'll be the kind of supernatural pathfinding flood, etc.
Yeah, the especially like the acrobatic pathfinding flood, which I don't think is sufficient right now, considering how much things get stuck in trees. Maybe we just need to let it freeze the game for a second whenever it has to be run, so it stops setting it to 2 FPS. There's all sorts of issues.
Yeah, no, the tree. I mean, it's just a difficult problem, and I don't know if it's a bug or the logic at this point. So it's been a while since I looked at the tree stuck dwarves, because they do flood. They're supposed to flood the acrobatic thing to get back to a larger connected segment after a little bit of time in the tree, and obviously something's wrong.
So this next question comes in from a username that makes me hungry. This comes in from Beer and Tacos. And they say, is there any intention to improve the in-game fortresses to reclaim in the future? Like adding a variety of buildings, adding more rooms or zones or workshops, other than metalsmithing and magma forges? If so, what kind of features, and interacting with the new layout or leftover populaces other than killing and or ignoring them?
Well, I mean, this is the map rewrite staring you in the face, because the non-player dwarf fortresses are the main offender in terms of old unusable code that I can't touch. I have various commented sections of the code in the non-player fortresses where it's just like, do not alter this function, or the game's, it's just, you're gonna just have to, undo your work. Talking about version control and reversions and stuff, that would be one of the few examples is when I tried to alter the non-player fortresses to make them a little nicer, and then it all fell apart. So it needs to be scrapped down to nothing and rebuilt in order to have any control over making those maps better. And then we can make them better. I mean, we can make them wonderful and varied, and they can kind of take their place like they should be. I mean, the game's called Dwarf Fortress, and the human towns aren't that interesting, but they're vastly more interesting than and navigable than the Dwarf Fortresses. I mean, it's kind of fun that the Dwarf Fortresses aren't navigable. It's kind of traditional in a Moria sense to have them be super confusing, but it's not great fun, is it? And so, yeah, no, it's just something
Obviously, you just need to have a button you can press in adventure mode that just gets you to the nearest tile that lets you fast travel.
Yeah, I guess if you know the way there, maybe it has.
If you spawn in the fortress, then it means you lived there, so you must know the way there.
You must know the way out, or you can talk to the nearest person and they'll tell you go east, and then you talk to the next person you find.
And they tell you to go
and
west.
Then you eventually don't find any people. Yeah, no, it just doesn't work unless some kind of like recall button where you think like, I live here, how do I get out of here? And then it can light up the path like on an airplane emergency exit.
Gives you a little dotted line like in Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, for the rest of the game, and then you just let a bot play it.
I always like to remind people that they're always talking about the big wait for this or that, but like every big wait in the past has been because of maps, as far as I can tell. It's all about the maps. Maps are hard.
Yeah, it's not easy. But it's it's the meat of the game, or the bones of the game in some sense. I mean, it kind of grew beyond that in a lot of ways, but it's still there's something about maps and procedural generation, because it's the thing people start with, and then you could just keep going forever.
Yeah, No Man's Sky rightfully won awards for its map generation. Well, it's still map generation in the end. And
Yeah,
like,
that's all.
there was a lot wrong with the game, but that was actually pretty good.
Yeah, I mean it's all. I mean all of them have gotten better than Dwarf Fortress now. I mean Minecraft's way better. All of them. All of them look like I'm just stuck in place. I gotta get this. I gotta get this stuff destroyed. Ah,
Destroyed and rebuilt.
yeah. Still, that's years, years out. But it, yeah. There you go. It'll be fun.
Speaking of things that are years out, Casualty would like to know, is there a possibility down the road that procedural faces will include things like missing ears or noses? I can imagine this would get tricky fast with all of the injuries the dwarves can have, but it's exciting to think about, even if it won't be for a long while.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those things that definitely feels like a phase 2 type thing. At the same time, I think Battle Brothers already does this, right? I mean it's not and we've done it in. I mean I had a game in 2004 that was yeah, just about a bunch of people fighting robots, and they could get their faces melted off and get their eyes shot out and stuff, and it would alter their procedural faces. I mean I have a lot of experience messing with procedural faces. The robots would squirt acid on you, and we kind of melt off the skin. You could also get syphilis in that game, and it would kind of white out your eyes after several years, I think is one of the symptoms. Unless that's gonorrhea. I don't remember. Anyway, that was a special game. And that was 20 years. You know how my games were like 20 years ago. There was like Liberal Crime Squad. We've been on many adventures. And one of them involved procedural faces. In stunning VGA graphics. And yeah, no, they look pretty good too because I was cutting up photographs. That's ultimately one of the reasons I couldn't release it. But it was a fun project, and I think we're going to be all in as we go. Once we start poking out eyeballs and tearing off noses, you know.
Yeah, I think it's a bit easier to just like remove missing bits, but when you've got like people with pulped noses or whatever, you're gonna have to sprite that, and that's a whole thought.
Yeah, but that's. I mean, it's not. I mean, so say we end up with, and who knows ultimately how this part will work, but say we end up with a row of like 16, 20 noses, then those can literally be pulped manually, visually, or if the nose is screwed up enough, it can just reduce down to one. Yeah, I'm optimistic. I mean, you can really screw stuff up and be fine. I mean, the game I was working on, we were doing it pixel by pixel when we started giving people scars and stuff, and that's still in the cards here too. Like if you want to display scars on somebody's cheek, you just kind of have to know where they are. And it can be a little off sometimes. And we'll see. I mean, I'll run it by Carolyn too, because Carolyn's in charge of like making this look nice. And whether there's any pixel-wise operations is kind of up in the future, because you can also, like every game these days is just like, here are your 16 different possible scars, right? And it just does that. And that's fine. It's not. It's like it's enough. And pixelizing things can be dangerous. But it's an exciting future, and we have control over every pixel in the images, so we can do cool stuff. We can yeah.
It's bringing it back to Armok 1 again with the scratching the little scratches into the menu and they bleed, that sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, because we have that control over all of the images now. I don't know that I've used it for much of anything. Like we derived some of the ramp pictures and stuff with the overlay, but we really do have control over every image's entire set of pixels, and could do terrible things.
Oh yes, and like even nice with SDL too. You can store it in the in the graphics card RAM now, so you got an extra 8 gigabytes to work with too. And I mean, okay, nice. We're also storing it in software so we can manipulate it later. So that's a whole thing. But it also means that like it doesn't add very much of a performance impact, because the graphics card is the thing actually rendering all the tiles now, and when it's doing that, it's not like that's all it's doing, and they're rather fast about that these days.
Yeah. I mean, this is we did jump many years into the future when you did that stuff.
Yeah, all the way back to like 2014. I don't know what year it was. And SDL3 is happening now, and that will be less effort, I think.
Yeah,
Once that's stable, I'll be able to update that on the spot, and then we will actually be in the modern era,
the
and it will
modern
be a
era.
glorious day.
Wow, the modern era. No, it can't be believed. I refuse to accept it.
I mean, that's what this whole thing has been. We're making the game modern.
I thought we were making the game like 1994, but
Yeah, that too, but baby steps.
baby steps, yes. The baby has been walking for a very long time. It's old, old baby.
Gaming like it's 1999. Speaking of things that aren't like 1999, when I was upgrading to Windows 11, if you could call that an upgrade, when I was side grading to Windows 11 recently, I was backing up a bunch of things because I'm a paranoid person like that, and realized I had about 90 gigabytes of Dwarf Fortress saves in the Steam folder, just the Steam folder. So I'm going to state that before I read off this next question from Benji, who would like to know if we'll ever be able to upload worlds to the workshop.
I was expecting Steam Cloud questions.
Yeah, I was expecting Steam Cloud too. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't like the user limits and stuff are all pretty high and stuff. I don't know. It doesn't seem
Workshop seems
it
doable.
seems doable. Yeah.
Yeah, the Steam Cloud. That's the saves are big. Like a lot of things will allow it, but like there's a point where Steam might actually just start going, "Hey, what?" You know, that sort of thing.
Where did all these terabytes come from?
Yeah, no, I had trouble with my Factorio saves. Like I couldn't quit out of Steam because it would be uploading for 20 minutes after I played the game.
Yeah,
and this would be kind of worse. I think they can get a little bit bigger. It kind of depends on how long you play each game.
Get crazy with Factorio.
Yeah, it can get pretty big.
A lot of solidarity with that. People getting big and complaining about the performance because they're just, we made the game twice as fast and now people are making their bases four times
as big. Yeah,
it's how it will always be. It's a constant arms race between how big, like people will always grow to fill the space you provide them.
But I mean, just generally speaking, we haven't, since the original release on Steam Workshop, haven't really expanded our like types of things, right? And aside from the work you did with the sounds, for instance, so there's a lot of thoughts there about what that could turn into that I haven't thought those thoughts, but people can suggest stuff, and there's definitely room to move there.
So I've got tons of questions left, but I think I've used a whole lot of your time at this point. So I'm going to ask kind of a interesting one, and then I'm going to close with kind of fun questions. So Layagushka here would like to know, are there any plans on adding more variety of buildings and items that can be placed and serve as places for dwarves to relax and play and talk, etc.? What they imagine is plotted plant gardens, benches for relaxing and reading, and even bar games like darts or equivalents of things like billiards.
Well, you know how that went, right?
Uh-huh.
It's like, oh yeah, we're gonna procedurally generate a bunch of bar games, and then we're like, well, we didn't get to that part.
At least I know how it went. I'm not sure how much of that's. I found vestiges of it lying around, like little implementations of Go boards or whatever.
Yeah, because I was just starting thinking about it, and those are really kind of not representative of the notes on the topic, of course, but so there's still hope. There's still hope for that kind of thing, but that's a really specific case. I think, generally speaking, we'd actually be better served by doing just some more basic stuff that we don't have. I mean, potted plants are kind of against, the dwarves get disturbed by that kind of thing.
Yeah, but,
they find nature somewhat disturbing. Yeah, potted mushroom perhaps. But I mean, we're just missing stuff like we don't have paint, right? We don't have a lot of stuff. I'm not sure what a dwarf thinks of paint, but they have pottery glaze, so they're not like against slapping stuff on stuff. Stuff slapping, they can do some of that. So, yeah.
Just have little Tacticus skill that they roll against each other in the taverns, and you don't like it says this game is currently at the third phase in which blah blah blah. Like you could always have that, I guess.
Well, we don't need to jump into like the board games, right? You could start with dice games, for instance. Dice games are easy to generate, comparatively speaking. I mean, and dice games that have random elements but still have an AI that can possibly be programmed and are not always tied and stuff like that. You can kind of control for that a little bit easier than you can with a board game. And I think, but that's, I mean, again, this is a very specific part of that question where the question was much more general. And I'm not sure, but just the even more general gist of the question is like, when do we have a chance to sit down and just kind of add some crap to fort mode, right? Because we're pretty far away from that. Pretty far away from that. It's difficult to just sit down and do cool stuff when there's so many big things on the table right now. And that's something that's kind of become kind of a broad problem. And it's, I mean, there are specific issues, not just with the games, but a similar thing happened to food, right? Where we're like, okay, we're going to do procedural recipes. And then, of course, when we didn't get to that, now everything's still just minced plump helmets, minced beer, minced in putting into a big roast that's just like this kind of layer of minced things. And that sucks. And, it'd be nice to kind of sit down and be able to work with that stuff and just kind of get things to a midway point. Because that's kind of a lot of how Dwarf Fortress suffers, is not having more of this kind of midway stuff where we shoot for the moon a lot. And sometimes we just don't take the shot because it would take some time, like with the tavern games, and then you just don't have anything.
Yeah, whatever's going on with genetics.
Yeah, well, the genetic system right now is just stupid, but we could, I mean, well, we're doing our very best.
It's one of those things.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing. I mean, yeah. It's like alphabetical Mendelian colors or whatever. But they don't mix. They just do dominant based on what your order is in the alphabet or something like that. I'm trying to remember.
So you end up with entire civilizations of nearly identical looking people, and I mean, I've seen that less lately, actually. Like, there's some diversity in the dwarves, at least. Like in 47.05, I'd look, and every single one of them has amethyst eyes, and like...
Yeah, apricot or whatever.
Yeah, they got, and like dark umber skin. Every single one of them is identical. They look a bit different now. I'm not sure what changed.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of just a whole. Yeah, I mean that's actually fun and fascinating to test, that kind of thing. Doing like demographic stuff on World Gen, at least I would find that an interesting kind of thing to do, and kind of see why they drift and stuff. Although there's probably science on that already, but. But no, so there's kind of a broad problem with the development of the game, and I'm not sure if like I haven't imagined yet, because we're just kind of starting out, but if Putnam's still working on the game in 6 months because they want to be around, what does that mean with fewer bugs, hopefully, and fewer tech things, because we got our ports done and we got our optimizations further along and stuff, then what does it look like to kind of do some feature programming, right?
Yeah, I have been thinking, I don't know what that's gonna... I've been sort of sneaking in little features into things like the sound mod, but it's all been modding stuff because
that's the thing.
I'm mostly familiar with.
But then there's and it's but these kind of things, like the paths cross when we're talking about like painting and stuff, because it's modderly, but it would be a core feature, right?
Yeah, and there's a point where when you get into myths and magic, you might want that, and I'd just slap in proper scripting language support or something horrible like that, and then we've got huge problems.
Yeah. Oh no, we can get back into tech stuff for sure. We can always return to hell at any point. I think this is an option. Yes.
I'm pretty sure it's a goal in the game to get to hell. I hate to break it to
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. I mean, because that would, I mean, what that would be, that, I mean, it would be cool to get speaking of games like Factorio or whatever that just have the scripts sitting there and you can play with them. Like we're not there with Dwarf Fortress modding it in any way, and so wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, like whenever I think of features I might be adding, it'd be stuff like, right now the fun stuff down in the big like walls of obsidian or whatever, that's not exposed at all, but it sort of could be. You could have like interactions running when you open those, that sort of thing. That's the first thing I think of, and that's still all modding.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of, my brain gets stuck on it. I don't
Yeah.
really think of how I would be involved in future feature stuff at all.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's like, we can actually have a discussion about that, and or if you decide you didn't want to be involved in the discussion, Zach and I could have a discussion, and then you could just do a thing that we decide.
Yeah, I could
It's all
just
complicated
like
in any way. I mean,
the game
we'd love to have you
is
participate
complex
though.
enough. The game is complex enough that it is always an option that I could just sit in my optimization hole forever. Like complex enough, and I am a big enough fan of optimization.
Yeah, and we
that
don't
I'd be
mind this. I mean, the game is so much faster now that this is actually a great thing. But I think where we might start feeling it, feeling like, not tension's not the right word, but something like that, is when I do disappear into I don't know, like map rewrite or something like that, and we do feel like the game, like the core fort game, maybe should be pushed along a little bit or something. But that's in the future.
Yeah, the parallel feature development in the future, that is a thought, and there's still so much to do with just like quality of life and other such suggestions that
Yeah.
might. I think it'll take more than 6 months for me to like.
Oh, yeah. That
Sure.
I was definitely thinking, like, well, you know how horrible I am with time. Everyone here knows how horrible I am with time. Yes, no, 6 months, like tack a zero on it, but maybe not a zero.
Yeah, what like the main thing I was thinking is that like, there's the big wait going on with the map stuff, and while that's happening, I'm just like sort of flipping all the UI on its head and making it all like rawable so people can define their own layouts or whatever, that sort of thing. I've been working in that direction. I don't know if it's like been too noticeable, but like the way the widgets work now is
No, that's
supposed
like,
to be laid out that way.
yeah, it creates a slight interesting conundrum we'll need to discuss with adventure mode. Because like, I wouldn't mind a few more widgets before I start making inventory screens and stuff, right?
Yeah,
'Cause
you could just send
redo.
me like a demand for a widget, and I'd probably fill it out. It's
I
fine.
want a widget. I want a widget. I want a widget.
So, the funny thing is, I was imagining myself as like the sort of basement goblin that you throw down a paper and eventually a widget gets thrown back up out of the hole. That sort of thing.
It's put in the well bucket and it comes back up out of the well.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just a general, like this whole situation is a very goblin-like situation. The goblins have like a well. They're not sure what's down there. Maybe it's a particularly like skilled troll or something. They put a little piece of paper in the well, roll it down, and they roll it back up, and there's like a figurine made to their specifications or something. Like that's what I'm imagining.
Yeah. And whatever that thing might be, we might just change that up. We'll see. But yeah, it's all. There's nothing about this that isn't really pretty exciting, though. It's pretty cool.
So I've got a question coming in from Caravan Robber 9000, which is going to tie into the question. And they say, "Hello, my favorite developers. Not so much of a question, rather than a possible exploit, but I've been keeping my dwarves fed and wealthy by legally stealing caravan goods. They unload at my depot, happily and content, before I immediately request the depot's removal. Then the loot and resources spill all about the place, and I have no trouble marking all of the items for disposal in a nice garbage pile deep in my fort called Ill-Gotten Goods. Is this intentional? Love you guys."
They're marked as stolen if you do that. The caravan does start getting suspicious.
Yeah, I mean, it's just. I mean, it was kind of there's a problem with the system right now, but basically they just know how much their stuff was worth when they entered the map, and they compare it to how much their stuff's worth when they leave the map, and they don't care why the value went down. They get upset about it.
Yeah,
And so the problem is the Dwarf Fortress civilization can't do anything to you because they're not capable of sieging you. So as long as you judiciously rob them, you won't get invaded. Like the humans and elves should invade you. If they don't, it's a bug.
at the very least, they'll stop showing up.
Yeah, they'll definitely not be happy about it. But the dwarves, it's kind of stuck right now. But not, I mean, it's not too hard to change that, right? I mean, we're just worried about like all of the different, because we had enough problems with like loyalty cascades and stuff as it is. But like if your whole
Terran
civilization
nine,
shows
yeah.
up, yeah, if you have a giant civil war inside your fort, I mean, well, I mean it's kind of fun, I guess, but it's like,
Yeah, there's just so many problems right now with just completely mysterious interactions with the parent civilization that make them stop showing up or whatever, that like
yeah.
adding more ways for that to happen, even if they make sense, might just cause people to think they might lump it all together into the big umbrella of weird bug, I don't know what's happening, this game is bad.
Yeah, it's more like, where is my outpost liaison part 49 or whatever.
Yeah,
But
it'd be
when we
nice for the
understand that
outpost
stuff
liaison
better,
to come storming in and yell at you about stealing stuff, but
yeah, and and some of these things aren't, like, yeah, it's just back in this category of like, take a week to do a cool thing, and isn't that nice? And hopefully, yeah, there'll be time for that.
So now I have a very important question, which is, have you been playing any games recently? This kind of goes for both of you.
Yeah, I'm sure I have. I played what did I actually, no, I must have played something. So I've just been revisiting old crap. I mean, I just grabbed the Nullius mod for Factorio to check that out. And but what, Etrian Odyssey popped up on Steam, and I was like, oh, I've heard of this game for like 50 billion years. And so I played that through the first level and then kind of lost interest. What else has been? There must have been some game that came out though. I don't know. Been a bit of a drought for me.
let's see. Played through Spark the Electric Jester recently. It's a 2D platformer, really good. The Pikmin, I just busted through a playthrough of that. Pikmin 2, I'm playing for the first time. That's a bit odd. Let's see, I've been playing Daggerfall lately, actually, quite a bit. That's why I brought it up, which is very interesting. The
Daggerfall or
Unity
Daggerfall
remake of it.
Unity?
Daggerfall Unity, which
Okay.
it's just more playable these days, but it's still the same game at the core.
Yeah.
So like, with all of its 90s smuttiness, games back then were kind of funny, as has been discussed. Um, let's see. So the most recent game in my Steam is Dwarf Fortress. Well, I guess that makes sense. I've been playing like a Castorio 2 space exploration game of Factorio, but only occasionally. Stellaris, I've been playing some. That's like I jump around a lot because I mean mostly it's just been stuff I've been able to do in like little 30-minute chunks while I'm compiling or whatever, thus the Pikmin.
Yeah, I remember that Diablo 4 came out, and so I played Path of Exile again. Just kind of reminded me that it existed, because I always had connection issues, but I haven't been having them. So that was cool to just kind of see what had changed in the last 7 years or something, however long it's been, and then yeah, I also played Beat Saber for a bit. That was fun.
It's too hot for that. I would I would
Yeah.
play it some, but it's 40 C right now. It's 100.
Eesh.
Yeah, my one thing says 39 C. My other thing says 105 Fahrenheit. So it's hot.
Eesh.
It's hot. It's bad.
Yeah, that's no good.
I mean,
If
I'm
I can't-
sweating sitting here. I've gone through 3 bottles of water just in this one conversation.
I can't even do 80, so
It's
that's
30C here right now, so.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm in a desert. It's dry heat at least,
That's
so
fair.
just drink the water and it's handled mostly.
we've had 60% humidity up here, so it's been a bit.
Though I can't. I mean, I smell, but like, there's no way to avoid this. Like, I could take a shower every 3 hours, but that's.
And then I guess my final question of this discussion is, so obviously you're working on adventure mode. When should we expect it?
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, you shouldn't expect it at a given time. It'll come when it comes, because as in this discussion, there's the two sticky issues are just kind of finalizing these interface decisions. That's not a huge one, but the main sticky issue is like, when is it ready, right? It's like, because Fort mode was going to be ready when it was converted, and then we went ahead and added some end game stuff, some little things, but not too much. We didn't add. I mean, we added quite a few little fun things, but not much. This, like we've been discussing, we're not sure it doesn't need more. So a date's going to be, even harder.
Makes sense.
I've played adventure mode I've played a version of adventure mode that exists. It had no UI. You could just move around. You were set into a random historical figure. So, like, there's been progress since then. Obviously, I saw the stuff about, like, I don't follow the graphics stuff too much. I saw the news about procedural phases at the same time as everyone else did. I did not expect it. It's exciting stuff.
Yeah, we just dropped that to Carolyn, because Zach and I had been talking about, we need this for adventure mode conversations, and then obviously it'll spice up the dwarf sheets too, and so we're like, we should just do it. We should just have Carolyn, give it a shot. And then when we brought it up with Carolyn over in the art channel, Carolyn was like, "Oh yeah, I did this on a game previously, actually," or maybe it wasn't a game. I don't remember. It was a project of some kind. We didn't go into the details. I don't actually know what it was, but so she has experience with this, and they're coming together quickly, and they look nice.
Well, that is frankly awesome, and I think that this has been, albeit a long, but a quite enjoyable conversation, at least from my end. So I just want to say a real quick thank you to both of you for lending me 2 hours of your time, and in Putnam's case, 3 water bottles. And I just want to say thank you to the chat room for being an awesome co-host. And honestly, just thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me in the community.
Yeah, no problem. It's always fun to drop by. Always fun to drop by.
And as I usually say at the end of these, chat room, just hang out and chill for a couple minutes. I will be back once I've done, or once I'm finished hanging up this Discord call, I suppose. So now is all of our opportunity to say goodbye to the chat, and I'll be back in a couple minutes.
Bye, chat.
Yes, goodbye, Twitch chat. My own streams, I'm just as bad at ending them.
Word.